glad to be here today. Just to let everybody know, the hashtag for this is Privacy Matters. We'll do our best to keep an eye on what's on Twitter so that people who don't want to ask questions by raising their hand, you can ask questions that way, even though it is kind of public. The topic today is encryption and cryptography. And just to give you a bit of background about me, I am the co-chair of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, and we're a group, an association of infrastructure providers, hosts, registrars, registries who have gathered together to advocate on behalf of the industry. That's about all the plug that I'm going to give. I've been working in encryption and cryptography since 1995 as a lawyer. So it's very satisfying for me to be here to talk about this and to have this topic come around again. I'm not going to do any talking. I'm just going to ask questions today, and we're going to get right to the talking. On my panel today, we have Thorsten. Just raise your hand when I call your name. Thorsten from Tor.
Jens. My name is Jens.
Jens, I'm sorry. I'm looking at people and calling the wrong name. Just introduce yourselves.
So, hi, my name is Jens Kubizil. I am one of the chairmen of the organization called torservers.net. We run quite a large amount of Tor servers throughout the world and help people like Ed Snowden, WikiLeaks, and activists, journalists, and also people like you to have privacy on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, Raimund Genes, CTO Trend Micro. We are doing the traditional stuff, the boring stuff. We write all the viruses, some people say, and then we remove all the viruses. This was never the case, but some people still believe it. My challenge at the moment is that our job is, and I'm very passionate about it myself, to fight, to identify cyber criminals. But nowadays, we see governments committing cybercrime and being cyber criminals as well. So it is an interesting aspect of our business when we see a piece of code and we don't trace it back to a Russian cyber criminal, but to a government facility. Really interesting business at the moment.
Great. Raphael?
Thanks, David. I'm Rafael Laguna. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Open-Xchange, and we do great stuff.
Okay. In addition to buying beer.
In addition to buying beer and wine, yes, which is great stuff too.
Hello, my name is Thorsten Kraft. I'm from ECO, the Association of the German Internet Industry. And as you know, we have a very strict position in data retention. And we don't like what the German government and all the other companies or all the other governments like to have from us. And that's our position.
Excellent. And like the I2 Coalition, ECHO does great work as an association advancing the German internet industry. So I encourage you to support them as well. And then our special guest to the right. Yeah.
I'm Sarah Harrison. I work as the investigations editor at WikiLeaks, and I run Edward Snowden and other whistleblowers' defense funds.
Okay, so on that note, the first question for the panel is, what I want to know is encryption a tool or is it a philosophy?
Both? No?
Yeah, go ahead. You can start.
Well, I would say that it's sort of obviously a tool. The philosophy part's more interesting in that I think that the concept of encrypting, why to encrypt, when to encrypt, how to use it, is more of philosophy, yes, but certainly a way of thinking. If you want to take that as meaning philosophy, it's certainly an approach to the way in which you interact and do everything online or everything digitally. If you're either an encryptor or not an encryptor, I would maybe say.
So that makes it a philosophy. You're either an encryptor or you're not. You're one or the other.
Yeah, or maybe there's a middle of trying to be an encryptor.
Okay. Anyone else, tool or philosophy?
For me, it's clearly, as a techie, for me it's a tool, but I would say just a few years ago, it was a tool for geeks, and this is why only a few people have been using it. If we think about how long it took Microsoft to integrate it into the operating system as BitLocker, or Apple with File Vault. But when you use the stuff, it's pretty cool and it's pretty transparent. It's the same when you look at PGP and everything. Now you have, pretty, I would say, easy to explain systems, no matter if it's for iOS, no matter if it's for Windows, which, not my mother, she's too old, but average people will understand. A few years ago, it was for us, for geeks, because we needed to encrypt stuff to share malware with other researchers and to do this stuff. And it was always initially a discussion, what standard are we using? Now this is gone. Now it's a common tool, which is good.
Well, for me, being a mathematician, cryptography is applied mathematics. So when my kids arrive at home from school and ask me, well, Dad, what can I do with math? I say, well, cryptography is one of the things you can do. So as cryptography and as mathematics is very close to philosophy, I would also tend to vote for philosophy.
Okay.
Well, it's also science, and science tends to work, right?
It should work if some companies are not intercepting encryption. I would like to refer to Superfish doing a bullshit in an encryption part, breaking encryption for their own company purpose, and this is something what we like to mention, what I like to mention. So for persons, for end customers, it's not really transparent if the encryption is really working, if some companies intercepting the encryption on the hardware of the end customer itself.
So let's follow up on that issue, and this is the concept of backdoors and front doors and building what we would say here are vulnerabilities into software. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I would, based on who I see up here on the panel, I would think that everybody is against that. But I mean, is it possible? I mean, is it ever possible to create some system that deals with that?
From a technical point of view, I would say no, nothing is secure. So you can, everything that is mentioning that there is a total protection or whatever is creating an illusion. If there are companies intercepting something, like a backdoor or in another way, then it's just something to make the end customer thinking that he is securely connected to the end host.
So you're saying if there's a backdoor, it's a false sense of security?
Definitely.
Well, the way science works is that you try to do your best to come up with the best way of doing things, improving it and trying it and testing it until proven otherwise, and then you try to do better. And I think that's the way encryption works too. Of course, if some rogue government agents sneak in some code and stuff, that's the way to interfere with the process. It doesn't mean that the process is flawed at all. It doesn't mean that science doesn't work or math doesn't work. Encryption algorithms can be proven to work, and programs can be proven to work.
Or
right?
the whole concept is not working. In the Superfish case, it was not breaking the mathematics. There was a software between the encrypted part, breaking it like a man-in-the-middle attack, because it's possible by the protocol itself.
Yeah, but
that's not breaking the mathematics.
So, but you're talking to someone from the U.S. and we don't believe in science.
I heard that.
Encryption came on the 6th day, no?
Yeah, and there are still some senators who would say that didn't come from on high.
And then God made PGP. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, exactly. That's the 12th commandment.
But I do think that encryption, the maths works in and of itself, but I think there does need to be an understanding of where the vulnerabilities still lie. I mean, you still have endpoint vulnerabilities, for example, that even if your encryption has worked, that's still an issue. So I think that, a lot of encryption doesn't have perfect forward secrecy, etc. So I think that even if the algorithm in and of itself is working, there are still many vulnerabilities that users need to be made aware of that they're not necessarily. I think there's a bit of this sort of false sense of security. I mean, I've seen it on some, as they've started up some of these online drop boxes that are using Tor, and don't get me wrong, I think Tor is wonderful, but they have this sort of, congratulations, you're using Tor, you are now anonymous, as though like that's going to solve everything. And of course it solves many things, but just saying it in those terms is false and provides a false sense of security, which in a way is worse than you assuming you're being monitored.
Which doesn't make it worse than not doing it, right? So what we can do is improve the things that we do.
True, as long as people understand the limitations of what they're
True,
using.
and this is what I think you said, right? Not giving a false sense of security, and I agree to that. But still, you know, the math of encryption does work. The implementations may be flawed because people sneak in stuff, right? And that's what, you know, was part of the revelations, right? that we've seen.
And what I additionally want to add is how we introduce an encryption stuff to the end customer is completely false. We teach them that if you encrypt, you're totally safe. And that's wrong. You are totally safe if the other companies are on your system, respect your privacy, and don't break into it.
Yeah, but isn't it our industry who created this? I remember McAfee boxes saying 100% protects against all malware now and forever. Isn't it, you know, a hoster saying, you know, your data is safe because I encrypt it? I think it's a homemade problem we as an industry created.
The complete industry is doing, in this regards, in my opinion, bullshit.
And people are a large vulnerability. I mean, look at Belgacom example, where their engineers were targeted. I mean, there are many pressure points to organizations rather than just have they got a good algorithm.
So to that end, what obligation does the industry have to disclose these vulnerabilities? I mean, what do intermediaries have? What obligations do they have to say to their users, yeah, you're using SSL, but that's not everything. Or you're using PGP, but that's not everything. What obligations?
This is a difficult topic because as American, you know that there's a gag order. So even if a US-based company knows about it, a government body might tell them you never talk about it. We, for example, in our industry in 2013, we received an open letter from Electronic Frontier Foundation, Bits of Freedom, if we will detect government written malware, if we ever have been asked by a government not to detect something. Only European vendors and Trend Micro, because we are Japanese, have answered. None of the US players ever replied. None of the British players ever replied, because maybe they have this gag order. And I think it's important to be transparent, but could you be transparent? Do you want up in jail by being transparent? That's the question.
So taking up the issue of transparency then, kind of what can the industry do to be more transparent? What can companies do to help educate users about what's going on?
Well, first of all, be as transparent as you can. Sarah and I were discussing this today, right? That's actually a feature of the service when you think of it, that you promise transparency and that you also promise to fight any type of gagging order or whatever that comes at you. And it's also what Ed said today, right? That you simply say, okay, here's my agenda. Another one that I like a whole lot, and that's based on a study that we just recently did on, you know, terms and conditions of services. You all know it's hundreds of pages, nobody reads it, right? Boil them down to the true and honest stuff that people really want to know. I mean, you as a lawyer may hate to hear that because we're cutting down the hours that lawyers may put into this, but maybe crafting 5 words is harder than crafting 5,000 words, right? So be honest in your terms and conditions and say what you do and also how you deal, you know, with such things as, you know, government inquiries and government gagging orders, what your reaction will be to that.
Well, and during my day job, I am reviewing crypto code, more or less, and what I see are failures and blunders all over the whole code. So I have to reject many code and say, well, do it again, do it better. And cryptographic code is very, very hard to write. And you need many eyes to improve crypto code. And what I see from my perspective is crypto code must be free software, must be open source that anyone has to have a look. And as long as crypto code is closed source and you can't have a look, then you're basically screwed.
But this did not solve problems. If I refer back to Shellshock, Heartbleed, and whatever, the source code is open for the stuff. Since 20 years, there is a security flaw in there where you look into it and say, how stupid is this programmed?
And that
So,
goes
so just to answer your question, to be open source is not really solving the problem.
Sorry, just very quickly, because that goes exactly to the point that Ed was making this morning about funding. I mean, no one is being paid to sit there 20 years later and audit code that's being around and used.
But it's a standard product. It was a standard product in use. So people who have normally using this for providing it to their end customer should have reviewed it. It's not about funding in that case, but claiming that something needs to be open source, that everyone can review it, doesn't solve the problem at all.
I would want to disagree strongly with that, if I may. I mean, we're a discussion here, right? First of all, the good news about those bugs were that they got discovered by not the authors or the owners of the code, but by other companies.
20 years later.
Well, you know, it was Google doing a code review on Heartbleed, you know, on the Open-SSH code, and finding that bug and, you know, suggesting a fix. And that, I think that bug was in there not 20 years, but maybe 2 years or something, right?
So
let me go on.
Okay.
So that you can only do with open source, right? Because nobody else can do a code review on closed source except the company that writes it. Number two, yes, there is indeed underfunding, and indeed, for the case of Open-SSH and others, it was, you know, students and, you know, lay people that did that on the side. You know, there is a lot of well-funded open source software development. You know, I know that I pay the Open-Xchange, Dovecot, PowerDNS employees. You would all say not a lot of money, I know, but I think it's a lot of money, you know. So they all do a nice living. At least they do get beer from our customers, right, that give us beer. Thanks, Mike. So we're living a good life. And that is well-funded open source software development. So what we would have to look at, if you look at the core critical components of the stack that you're offering, and you find that there is well-funded software, you're probably fine. If you find there's underfunded software, you should think of how important that component is to your stack and maybe start funding it to make the software better. Now, is closed source software better than open source software?
This is nothing what I have said.
So,
I have said that to be an open source software is not the proof that something has could be detected, because the Heartbleed bug definitely showed that the opposite of it.
It's not the proof. You can't prove correct software anyways. We know that, unless it's less than 3 lines of code, right? You cannot prove the correctness of software when it gets a little more complex. But is open source software in general better than closed source software or not? That is the question. And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Is yes.
Okay, so one thing I want to push back a little bit on, and this might be taking food out of my kid's mouth, but everybody's crying. The concept of litigating and saying to governments who are compelling disclosures, we're going to fight every subpoena, we're going to fight every warrant, that's a very expensive proposition for companies who are really struggling to make payroll. So other than hiring a fleet of lawyers, which is not a bad idea, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea.
As a lawyer, he needs to say this.
Other than hiring a fleet of lawyers, what can companies do to help show their customers what they're doing, to help educate their customers about the requests that they're receiving? How can that be done?
At first, don't own the keys as a company. Number 2, don't, as we discussed before, don't have your own backdoors. If you know about vulnerabilities, even if they're not public, fix it. do better. We all have to do better software review. Every 1,000 lines of code, you have an average 15 to 50 bugs. That's scary. If it's mission critical, like the space shuttle software, this was reviewed for 2 years because you don't want to fix it when this thing is up in the space. So we need to do a better job. On the other hand, our development cycles are faster and faster because customers want it. Do you think we as a commercial company could charge more money because our software is nicer and better written? No. Customer wants something fast and customer wants something now. That's why we rely on independent researcher. But you also could we have companies using our software doing their own review. We do source code escrow for certain companies who want it. So you could do something, but you have job security. We also have a huge team of lawyers, and they are pretty expensive. But as a big company, as an international company, I think it's unavoidable to have these lawyers because you will be confronted with something all the time. No matter if it's law enforcement, no matter if it's a government or somebody else, you will be confronted with things.
So Sarah, is there information that could be provided to you or information that could be provided to third parties that would help? So the question was, is there additional information that companies could disclose about the processes that they're receiving that would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, for example, I'm not sure exactly how one would play this out, but for example, as we now know, the issues around Google, and one thing that is very interesting that we actually only found out through quite a bit of research is how in bed Google is on a personal level with very high level of the US government. So I think actually knowing how independent the people that run a company are, how easy is it just that someone from the US government calls their friend up, or are they having to issue full-on warrants? I think this also would be quite an interesting thing that would help.
All right. What is often recommended as a level of, as a means of signaling is to have a so-called canary. So put something on your web page or on your report which says, we haven't received any subpoena. And as long as you receive one, you take out this message. This was done by librarians in the US first, and they put a sheet of paper in their rooms, and then when the FBI came and wanted to have some records, they removed the sheet and everyone knew that something was happened. And some companies also do this on their web pages, on their reports and so on, and that might be also a way to do it.
So a warrant canary.
Yes.
Yeah, and as a user, I think a buyer of software, no matter if it's a support program for open source, no matter if it's a commercial program, also needs to do the due diligence. For example, in US, there's a venture capitalist which is not for profit. And when you see a VC not for profit, your alarm bells should go up. It's funded 100% by CIA. It's called Incutel, and just look at the list of companies they support. It's pretty interesting. And if I'm, as a German, want to buy this piece of software, I likely will have the code, my data revealed to certain authorities.
So let me. This question just occurred to me while we were talking around there, down on the floor. Why is it that there are four Germans on this panel? What does it say about Germany and the German view of privacy?
First of all, it says we are in Germany.
You know, and they told me I was in Spain.
There you go, and that we're really trying to sort of get you think that from the weather you could probably tell that you're not, right? Well, anyway, even though World Hosting Day does a great job of having awesome weather all the time, so a big hand to that, right? You did an awesome job. Now, Germans, I think, have a history of being snooped upon by their own governments. You know, we had Nazi Germany, and among the many bad things that we've done, we had the Gestapo, which was the internal police snooping on the Germans, and everybody who was not sort of in line with the government was in big trouble. Then part of Germany after the war sort of took over the system of the other Reich, which was called Soviet Union, which had more or less the same system. And they had the Stasi, which is called the Staatssicherheitsdienst, which translates into National Security Agency, which is interesting, right? These guys. And again, they snooped on their own people, and everybody, for every 10 people, there was one working for Stasi. I was born in East Germany, and, I got out at age 10 in 74, so I got lucky. But my parents, after the wall came down, found out that one of their best friends was working for the Stasi. And, what happened is not so much that, they had nothing to hide, right? But it takes away the privacy, and you even disallow yourself thinking certain things. Religions are pretty good at that too, because God is listening, right? In GDR, the Stasi was listening.
So you're drawing the analogy between God and the NSA?
It must be God sent, right?
Okay. I just wanted to be clear here that we're talking about theology, encryption, philosophy, and all those things.
Julian actually, just on that note, just because it's quite funny, Julian did he was invited on for some BBC radio Thought of the Day, like they do once every year, like an alternative one, and they get on random guests. Thought of the Day is a religious show, very popular in the BBC. And they do this alternative one, and it was some musician, and she could get her own guests in, and she had Julian, who then decided to do his entire speech about how the Christian church was actually one of the best spying agencies in the world, because everyone comes into their confessional boxes and tells them everything. And yeah, Thought of the Day Normal did not take too kindly to that.
This is not the direction that I thought that this conversation was going.
Sorry.
No, but he made a very good point about Stasi and so on. People somehow knew about it, and it was a shame of fear. And that's for me also kind of transparency. When I'm in China, and I'm pretty often in China, we have a big development team there, I know that I can't access certain web pages. And I actually have a private collection because they show comic cartoons why you can't visit the web page. And they're pretty funny. And they change the design all the time. It's like, this Hello Kitty in Chinese. So I know that I'm being monitored. When you are in Russia, it's pretty funny. When you are in Moscow and you have a TV you could turn, try to change the angle of the TV away from your bed. When the TV is back adjusted later on, you almost could be sure that a camera is inside. So when I'm in Russia, I need to be careful with certain things. The problem with US was that it was not transparent. That I personally believed it's a democracy. We had some indicators, Stuxnet and this kind of stuff, where we knew pretty early it must have been government-founded, state-sponsored malware, which was creating havoc for Siemens, WinCC systems all around the globe, not just on the intended target. So Siemens was pretty pissed about it. And this was the first indicator that they're doing things which at least myself and my company had a problem with. And then when Edward Snowden revealed it all, it was, shit, it's a democracy or not?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've noticed and drives me nuts actually quite a lot, is that I actually find the West in these situations more disgusting in a way, because there's a huge amount of hypocrisy that goes on. I mean, if you were to take Guantanamo Bay, for example, and put it in Russia, I mean, the world would be invading. But we've just lived with it all quite fine, because it's, an American organization or entity for however long. And I think the same, I've had a lot of people sort of coming up to me about sort of Ed and being like, how can he be there in Russia and they surveil? And I'm like, the irony of what you just said is just extraordinary to me. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference. Of course, every state surveils, Russia surveils, etc. But as you say, that there's more of a feeling and understanding in many other nations, whereas in the US, well, we don't know about it, and but once we do, it's to protect us, though, so it's okay. But it's all the same thing.
Okay. So kind of going along the policy lines that we're talking about here, what can intermediaries do? I mean, from a policy perspective, what can people on this panel, what can your companies do to help inform policy or to help change policy?
Keep publishing.
And first of all, respect privacy. Respect the privacy of the end customer.
So
in Germany, we are very.
Let me challenge that a little bit, though. That sounds wonderful, right? That's like babies and Christmas. Respect privacy. What does that mean? What does that really mean?
I want to give you a sample. A couple of years back, the Germans, if you talk to German companies, they were very sad about the strong data privacy law, what they have, because it is minimizing the possibilities what advertising companies have in regards or in comparison with American companies. In nowadays, I have to tell, I'm pretty honest about the strict data privacy laws what we have in Germany, the strictest worldwide, because it limits the possibilities of, let's not only focus on spying on the customers from a governmental side. Let's keep an eye on the commercial way, like smart televisions, analyzing what you're looking. Let's look on the cameras which can be installed on a smart television and can be enabled and disabled. Not only looking on the governmental side. I have to say, the data privacy law, what we have established in Germany, is currently, from an end customer approach, the best position what we can have. And I'm proud of the strict data privacy law.
And that's a good thing. The bad thing is that all the companies outside Germany don't give a shit about them. Yeah. Right? So if you go to Google, that's an American company. If you buy a Samsung television, it will still listen to your living room and send everything you're saying, to South Korea, not to North Korea. That's the good news, right?
So that goes to a fundamental policy point, and that is, while if we accept the position that the German privacy law is the gold standard of privacy laws,
it's the strictest one.
Strictest.
It limits the companies
okay,
in earning money out of the data what has been gathered.
We'll say that it's the strictest, but it's Germany is a relatively small country. How do you change the laws around the world or change the way other people look at privacy? Yeah. Not all technology is going to be resident in Germany.
If you look on the European Commission, for instance, then what do they do currently? They change the data privacy in Europe and getting closer to the German law. That's currently happening in Europe, that they make it stricter for us companies in Europe and getting closer to the strict German law. And I'm proud of it.
Yeah, and I'm proud of it as well. And you have to think about the effects there. When we have this in Europe, and I think it takes way too long till we have it all over Europe, because it would help us to sell our services, to sell our software, to sell whatever, because then we have a standard all over Europe. You need to be so adaptive to local rules and regulations anymore. I think they weaken it a little bit too much, but it's definitely stricter than it is in most countries at the moment. And the beauty of it is, you can't ignore Europe. Europe is a big market. So companies all around the globe will need to comply with these stricter rules, or they will not be able to do business anymore in Europe. That's what my hope is.
and you can't ignore the German market. The German market is strong, and it is a strong market.
And cheap, right? Given the euro weakness to the dollar. But I like what's going on, just like you do in policy making. The question really lends to policy enforcement. No policy is worth the paper written on if it's not enforced. And I don't see us being in the position. I mean, the internet is by nature a global thing. And, closing out US American companies from, you build a little China around Europe because, Google, Facebook, and the likes simply ignore the rulings that we have here. That's probably not a good way to do it. I mean, we had discussions about so-called Schengen routing. Schengen is the passport union that you can travel without showing your passport among those countries. So we sort of build an internet amongst each other, which would be a big intranet, right, and not an internet anymore. That won't work, right? So we don't want to shut out services from the outside, and we don't want to be shut out with our services to other countries. So that's not a solution. So in a way, policymakers are a little sort of inefficient, to say the least, because the nation state means nothing on the internet, right? The biggest nation state probably is Facebook, with 1.3 billion users on their system. It's bigger than China. And they can enforce whatever in their own nation state, and no matter where the people that are using Facebook are living, and no matter what the legislation is. I mean, we Germans tried once or twice, right? When we didn't like Street View and we allowed people to sort of get the pictures of their houses, taken off Street View, and then Google said, what the heck, we simply ignored Germany, we shut down Street View in Germany, you go F yourself, right? And that was one, and maybe this law, the right to forget, taking down links from Google, and they had to hire another 1,000 people to implement that. They do that, that's fine, but it's really almost only lip service, because it was sort of the obvious populistic sort of actions that were taken against them. But we've never managed to really hurt them so much, and I can't remember a case in past history where we were able to hurt a company so much that they couldn't continue doing the business they did.
So what I'm hearing here are a lot of economic arguments, and I like economic arguments to a certain extent, but you're going to have to convince the rest of the world politically why the German standard of privacy or the strict view of privacy that we're talking about works. Why does it work?
But I disagree with that statement that you just said. I mean, most of the policies are made from lobbyists. So, I mean, policy comes from commercial interest.
So you would say it's all self-interest.
Yeah.
I
mean, it becomes all very altruistic as soon as there's, a bottom line that's affected.
I was trying not to be antagonistic, but now that you've opened the door, I'll be antagonistic.
I'm always here for that. Don't you worry.
So what I'm hearing from the 4 German companies here is self-interested, right? The German law is the strictest. It's the best. And as a result, you should buy German products.
Yeah, but once again, respect privacy. That's what I stated before. Because we have a strict privacy law, but when Facebook changed, for instance, the terms and conditions, they fucked on it. It is not illegal by German law how they changed the privacy law, but they said, okay, we are much bigger. We have 1.3 billion customers. What the fuck about the 80 million of German?
So to continue
they have broken 70 million times the German law, but they don't respect it.
Why is the German view of privacy better than the Chinese view of privacy?
That's a trick question, right? I don't even know where to begin to tell you, right? I mean, we do have individual, rights and stuff, right? And
let me say something very nasty. The Chinese are better in enforcing it.
Definitely.
Why Germans, Thorsten, I really like eco and everything what we are doing. But, you know, to be very frank, we are toothless tigers. As Americans would say, we don't have balls. And sometimes I really have a feeling it's true. I stopped, being a witness at court. I stopped to even be near politicians because what they are doing sometimes, I just can't stand it. Because very often, all around the globe, including Germany, it's just stupidity. And I agree with you. Sometimes it's really protectionism for German companies. It's a good example is this, have you ever heard, if you're not from Germany, Sarah, okay, you live in Berlin, but
Try me anyway, go on, what's the game?
have you heard about Industrie 4.0?
No.
See? See?
Did I play all right?
Angela Merkel declared the fourth industrial revolution. And only Germans know about it because all the documentation is in German. And nobody else, to be honest, cares. And it will be safe, it will be protected, and I think it's a benefit. But we could do it because Germany is the #1 export nation for this kind of equipment, machinery, producing goods. So there we could do something by ourselves. But for software, I don't think it's possible. We could say, German software is better, but again, do we really do source code review? The German government is still buying a lot of US products. An average German user is buying a Samsung TV, is having a Facebook account.
That's fine, but to be honest, do we have competing company produced in Germany? For instance, if we are talking about solutions like FireEye, is there an existing product coming from Europe? No, I don't know one. I don't really know one.
At shameless advertisement, there's a Japanese product.
I'm talking about European product, and I don't find a European product.
But really, you were answering. Are you trying to sort of put yourself into a sweet spot and protect your business and put yourself forward? I would phrase that otherwise. I would say, and that's what I like saying to myself as a motto in my life. Why not do something good and make money while doing it? So you do two good things, because money makes the world go around and influences policy, as we have heard. So without money, you're not doing a whole lot of things, not even a panel discussion like this one, right? So you need money to change things, and you need to make money to be able to change more things. And if you believe that ruthlessly open source software that implements alternatives to services that are not to be trusted, is the only way to get people use other stuff because they need alternatives before they can even change, I think it's a good thing. And it's an even better thing if you make money with it because it gives you the capability to do even more things. And we are here together with this industry that is making money from providing such services. And the whole discussion we're having here provides a huge opportunity for everyone outside Germany and inside Germany to provide the alternatives to the over-the-top solutions that created these silos that made it so easy to be spied upon and that exploit our data. I think that's a good thing.
So kind of using the in Germany versus outside of Germany, I'd like to take now to see if there are any questions from the floor for the panelists. I think if you want to raise your hand, we have a couple of people with mics who are willing to run up and get your questions. No one wants to defend the German view of privacy? Okay.
Yeah, I'm German. I have a question. I worked about 6 years ago for a network forensic company, US company, and my biggest customers here in Germany was in the federal space. And the technology I was dealing with was network decoders. They could actually monitor the traffic and reconstruct the entire network traffic. And my experience was that data privacy in Germany is written down in our constitution. It's a big thing, but actually the government agencies in Germany, they have a different understanding of data privacy. They capture traffic, they can reconstruct the traffic, they can monitor the traffic. And from my experience, I decided then, after 2 years working for this US forensic company, to go to encryption technology. And I think there's always a big difference between the the reality, what's really going on, because from my view, actually, the German intelligence service or federal German police is not. There's no big difference to the American government agencies, but we have here data privacy laws. But I think some German agencies also break the rules.
So let me kind of boil that into a question for the panel. It is curious to me that while the initial disclosures about surveillance came about the NSA and the Five Eyes, there's been a lot of reporting about how other countries' laws facilitate surveillance as well. Why is it that we're only focused on the subjects of the NSA disclosures?
No, I don't think we are doing this. I still remember when Finn Fisher, a commercial spyware, was used by the German government to actually infect the computer actually at my home airport, Munich airport. And the defense attorney got a copy of the hard drive, sent it to Chaos Computer Club, and the German government got into deep shit, to say it in polite terms, I would say, because the malware grabbed way more than what was allowed by law. And that's a nice thing about Germany. This was costing some heads. It's like, don't get caught with your hand in the cookie can. The Americans have been caught more often because it's the Wild Wild West. They're always caught. That's reality as well. But maybe the Germans, try to make it more clever. But we have an interesting legal system here in Germany. We, for example, Trend Micro is considering legal steps against the Bundesnachrichtendienst for buying vulnerabilities for 4.5 million euro from a company in Europe, Wupen. And actually, they don't use it to tell us about their software vulnerabilities. They use it to spy on people in other countries. And our argument is, tell us how you could ensure that the malware you're creating with these vulnerabilities only stays overseas. And we didn't receive a good answer yet. And that's what you could do in Germany. I don't know if you could do the same thing in US. Have people tried this?
Have people tried to sue the U.S. government?
For what is happening, yeah?
Yes, so people have tried to sue the U.S. government.
David.
Yes, somebody is...
Hey, here, Søren is here.
Hey, Søren.
I thought it was God.
Hey, Søren. Give a hand to Søren, right? Woo!
I have a question to Sarah. Do you have something to do tonight?
Yeah, I know. I'm watching my clock.
Yeah?
What
You're
is it,
making
Søren?
that sound really dodgy.
Now you have to tell us what it is that you're doing tonight, Søren.
No, I stay here. Sarah needs to go.
Sarah, you want Sarah back? We don't give her back. We want to keep you here, right?
You can't. We're publishing something very soon, so I have to, sorry. But back to what the question that we were talking about, I think that with what you were saying, I agree. The problem is you have to catch them first. That's the big thing. And to me, it's been an extraordinary journey over the last few years to understand how little accountability and democracy there actually is in the West. There was, in the height of the German public call for Snowden to be given asylum, and it was obvious that the majority of the public wanted him to be safe in Germany. And I had meetings with quite a number of politicians that actually said, do you know what? Even if we could get it so that the government would give him asylum, I actually don't trust our own secret services not to give him secretly to the US. That's an extraordinary state of affairs that a country such as Germany, it basically feels beholden to another state, like on a whole other continent. So I think that there's an element of sovereignty that we need to get back around the world, and we have a relationship with our government, and they're beholden to us, and that relationship should be strong, and it's not at the moment.
Okay, so let me see if there's one more question. Is there anybody who has one question?
There's a lot of questions here.
Okay, well,
Just Sarah wants to go home, I
Do-
think. That's it. You know, that's all I wanted
Sarah,
to say.
No, she doesn't.
you're free to go. If-
I feel a bit rude, just like leaving. Should we do the one and then
we'll
can I leave?
do the one, and since I was looking over in this direction, it's this gentleman over here.
Okay, thank you. So, in fact, I am a Belgian company who had decided to place all his servers in Germany, just because of the privacy and the security provided in Germany. But my question is, how long would it last? Because the way Germany and Europe is going for the moment is it's going more and more, let's say, in bed with America and the NSA. So how long can, let's say, Germany guarantee the privacy is done?
So I love that question, and what I'd like to do is kind of use it as an opportunity for people to kind of close out here individually and talk about how there can be some sort of pushback and kind of resistance or emphasis on moving policy in the direction of more privacy or towards less surveillance, and how can companies do that?
So to answer your question first, we have an election. You have decided for a kind of a new government that is not really liberal, let's say it that way, not really respecting the privacy itself. This is something what you can change with your election at the next time. This is just one point. I can't tell you how long we can, we as the industry or as the lobby of the industry can keep the current situation online. If I have a look on the political area, I have to say the current government is a little bit different than the beforehand one. So, this is the first thing. Your question was?
My question just follows on to yours. How do you avoid this issue of every election becomes a possibility for the standards to change?
We always, as the industry, can try to be loud out if something changes in a way we don't like. And this is what we as ECO are doing for the members, what we are representing, like the hosting ISPs, where we say, okay, we cry out a little bit louder because we are a little bit closer to government, and we try to make it like our members want to have it. We can't guarantee, that was the question what the guy had, that something will not change in the law the next times.
Okay, Raphael?
I think there's two things. One is the economical incentives. So why not create businesses around creating, good services, and thus people that have an interest that they can still cater these services and that they're not compromised. And the other one is, the good thing about the internet is it makes communications easier and permeation of news. So the things that Ed and Sarah have done have had a huge impact on the awareness of people of what is going on. And you use the modern means of communication to distribute that message. And we could talk to Ed today, even though you can't disclose where he is for very, very good reasons, right, that we all fully understand. So, we can, as we are the people that understand what is at stake and that are delivering part of the technology that makes this thing work, I think there's a lot of responsibility on us to educate the policymakers by all the means we have. And that includes money, because, you have to influence the policymakers, with Ecoverband, I2 Coalition, and things like that, talk out loud. We need to support WikiLeaks to find new things that we can get out to the world to educate people more and more. And we have to put out alternatives for the products that we should discontinue using so that people have a place to go. So we just should continue to go down that path.
Okay, I'm just going to go down the line here.
Okay, I would say what I always tell my customers, just accept that you have a zero trust environment. Just accept that the government might knock at the door of a hoster and they have to release the data. So when you ask us, when you ask a hoster to do the key management for you, that might be easier for you, but it might not be the best thing to do. The best thing is that you keep the keys for your kingdom, for your data. When you are signing up to a technology which is harvesting a lot of data, figure out where the data is stored and what else is done with the data. Who of you is wearing a fitness band? Who of you is wearing? Okay, there's one US-based company who's selling your data to 65 other companies. So very soon you will get targeted advertisement for, yeah, you're not fit enough, you know, and we offer you a fitness studio discount or something like this. So I think we all need to be more responsible, asking the question and just accepting that we can't trust anyone.
Thanks.
Well, if you ask you what you can do, just use a little bit of your bandwidth and run your own Tor server. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that it aligns with a lot of the other comments, but I think education really is the key. And one thing I've found is that there actually a lot of the politicians that are more sympathetic to certainly our way of thinking have absolutely no idea how the internet works, what goes on. Surely it's just some mystical thing everywhere in the air these days because there's Wi-Fi everywhere. No, I mean, like, these are the sorts of comments. So I think, like, I mean, I've had conversations with people that it was literally a revelation to them that there are cables under the sea that carry the internet. So I think that really education, just even on this basic level, because they have no, I mean, the Bundestag inquiry that's going on at the moment, I mean, they have no idea what they're reading, what they're meant to be doing, what they're looking at. So I really think that as boring as it may sound, like really basic education would be a huge, huge help so they even understand what they're deciding a law on.
So on that note, I'm retitling this night talk, God, Encryption, and Politics. Particularly appropriate that since it's Lent. So we are all, you can see we all still have some full beers. We're all going to be around to chat a little bit. We'd like to continue the conversation with you. And I'd like you to join me in thanking all of our panelists for being up here and you for coming out and also for Open-Xchange for bringing us all beer.